Capcom is no stranger to Legend of Zelda, and I mean that quite literally. They were the development team on both Oracle games, Four Swords, and the Minish Cap. Capcom have always been guns for hire, especially back in the GameCube era, and while the studio's output can vary wildly at times, they are probably one of the better third-party development studios overall. Which is why one depressing thought that always crossed my mind was that Capcom never really got to work on or make a 3D Zelda. They had a working relationship with Nintendo, they had experience making 3D action games, and yet Big N never really approached them with an offer. As far as I know. Maybe some shady backroom negotiations happened at one point. But until somebody spills the beans, I doubt that happened. Yet that does not mean Capcom never made a Zelda-inspired game. In fact, they probably made one of the better ones. In the ancient land of Nippon, a foul wind blows as an unseen darkness creeps over the lands. A legend is told of an ancient hero, Nagi, who slayed a multi-headed dragon known as Orochi. Helping Nagi on his journey was a strange white wolf, Shiranui, a mysterious animal with supernatural powers. Together, the duo felled the evil beast, but at a great cost, for Shiranui would succumb to her wounds. A statue would be erected in her honor, but time wears on and events fade into memory. Memory fades into legend, and legend fades into simple stories. The people do not believe in gods anymore, and as such, the power of the divine protectors of the world fade. Those who spread their word are absent, and the people cling desperately to what little they have. This is where our story begins. These two kanji can be read a multitude of ways. Traditionally, it simply means great deity or god. Yet interestingly enough, this kanji means wolf. This kanji can also be read the exact same way as the prior two. Think of it like how steel can both mean a very hard metal and the act of taking something from someone. Both of these kanji read Okami.
Okami.
You could almost imagine if this game were made by a different development staff, they'd name it something like God Dog and throw on some ugly CG render box art. Thankfully, cooler heads prevailed, and the people understood that the appeal of this game was its culture. Thus, Okami released for the PS2. A truly remarkable experience that I want to talk about. And yes, I said it released for the PS2. I've seen people call this a Wii game, and bruh. I played this game on the PS2 back in 2006 as intended. None of this Wiimote pointer shit. I use the right analog stick like a man. So yeah, Okami, one of my favorite PS2 titles. Right up there with Jak 2, Ratchet & Clank, Sly Cooper, Devil May Cry 3, Metal Gear Solid 3, Shadow of the Colossus. You know what, let's just say the PS2 had a lot of good games and Okami gets to join the pantheon, alright? I want to talk about it. We'll be going over the various aspects of the game that I like. The story, the characters, and the gameplay. Obviously, spoilers for most everything will abound here. I highly encourage you to go play this game for yourself before giving this video a watch. It's available on all modern consoles, and it still holds up pretty well. Now, the reason I'm doing this should be obvious to anyone who's been paying attention to gaming news over the past few months, but I want to save that discussion for the end of the video. Until then, let's just focus on the game as it is now. So let's dig in and find out what's so godly about this doggone good game. Is that really the best dog pun I could come up with? The first thing anyone notices about this game are the visuals. Games like Jet Set Radio and Legend of Zelda: Wind Waker obviously did cel-shaded visuals long before this game was made, but it still says something that Okami's art style was truly something groundbreaking at the time. Most cel-shaded games then, and hell, even now, try to emulate popular cartoon styles, like anime, or more anime. But Okami really showed that cel-shading doesn't need to emulate animation. I mean, it is animation, these are animated characters and 3D models, but the style it's trying to emulate is akin to ukiyo-e block paints from the 17th century, and it gives the game this painterly, uneven aesthetic and texture that you just don't see in video games. Hell, I don't think you see this in animation much either. Outlines on characters don't uniformly morph when they move. They smudge and shift as though each frame of their animation was lovingly painted by hand. Obviously that isn't the actual case. It's all just programs and algorithms designed to give it that appearance. But I think it says something that the only other games I can think of that look like Okami are games that are directly inspired from Okami. This game is beautiful, and one of the reasons it's been ported to so many consoles is because there's literally no need to update it. In an industry where it seems like every game is being remade or remastered or given some cut that makes unnecessary edits, Okami is remarkable in that they got the art style right on the first try. Outside of upping the resolution and letting the game run in HD, you really don't need to change anything else about it. It looks as good now as it did in 2006, and it'll look the same in 2040. You can't change the visuals, because if you did, it wouldn't be Okami. You may as well try to make Super Mario a first-person shooter, it'd be just as crazy as that. Side tangent here, but can I just say it's really funny to me that back in 2002, everyone hated Wind Waker's art style because it was too kiddie and too cartoony for Zelda. Then when Twilight Princess was shown off, everyone was freaking out about how awesome that game looked. And now Wind Waker still looks as good as it did in 2002. And Twilight Princess only looks less good over time. I just think it's kind of funny how that works out. And speaking of Twilight Princess... Remember in Twilight Princess how Link turned into a wolf and everyone thought that was so cool? I mean, I get it, wolves are cool. Shout out to all the guys who have wolf personas out there, you guys are great. But I want to take this time to say, Okami beat him to the punch by a few months. Hell, they didn't just beat them to the punch, they committed to the combo. Oh, you turned into a wolf in Twilight Princess to give yourself a few extra moves and abilities. Yeah, how about being a wolf for the entire game? Oh, but Link can't be a wolf for the entire game either, he needs to use his sword. Doesn't stop Amaterasu from having multiple swords. Hell, she can equip 2 swords and dual wield. Beat that, Triforce boy. Also, you heard me right. Did you play this entire game thinking you were playing a boy wolf? Hell nah! She is a bad bitch in the literal sense of the word. Okay, I swear that's the only bitch joke I'll make in this review, I promise. I've clearly gotten ahead of myself, let me take a step back. Okami takes place in a fictionalized version of Japan's mythological past. Being one of the oldest countries in the world, Japan obviously has a lot of mythology. And this game is not really an accurate retelling of it. It's more like a grab bag of names and vague identities that can be ascribed to characters. Look, it's Benkei! I mean, he's not a return to Yoshitsune, but he does want to collect 1,000 swords. Oh, that Benkei. You'll go on to inspire Gilgamesh from Final Fantasy. The game is littered with NPCs named after and associated with various Japanese myths and folktales, often remixed for the sake of its own world. It's really cool to have a game that's this focused on Japanese folklore. Sure, Japanese culture is in a lot of games. Because, I mean, yeah, obviously. But this game is literally about the culture that it's coming from, and that's really cool. Zelda, for the most part, tends to focus on Western mythology. Not explicitly about any particular Western myth, obviously, and there's some Japanese touches down there, particularly with the Sheikah. But Zelda is more or less your typical Western fantasy. Swords and sorcery, knights and princesses, castles and kings. But Okami is focused on Japanese culture explicitly, and that's a pretty interesting diversion. You don't always get games about the culture that the staff working on it are intimately familiar with. Also, hey, it's cool to have a game about Japan that's not about Oda Nobunaga. For like, the 50th time. Getting back to our heroine, it's really funny to me that you just play this entire game as a dog. Like, not some magical talking dog or shapeshifter, you're just a dog.
Jingo,
I'm a dog.
Jingo,
I'm a dog.
Jesus Christ,
It really opens up this kind of game in a way I find fascinating. Like, normally Link is just some kind of chosen one or hero of destiny. He's the wielder of the Triforce of Courage. But he's also usually just some weird kid from some podunk village. In Okami, meanwhile, you are a goddess. Not just any goddess, the goddess of the sun. On some level, this makes you a lot stronger and more important than someone like Link. But on another level...
Hi, doggy.
Like, you need to remember, this is a time when people's faith in the gods has waned. And as such, your own powers have dissipated too. Amaterasu isn't as strong as she once was. And you need to go out of your way to rekindle people's faith in the gods, so that you can regain the power you once had. And that's a mechanic in this game. Doing good deeds and helping people earns you faith, which is this game's version of experience points. Most normal people in Nippon don't see Amaterasu as a goddess, they just see her as some friendly white wolf. Which, I'm not gonna lie, I'd be a bit worried if a wolf wandered into my house and started eating my food. But it ironically kinda makes more sense in Okami's case than in Zelda's case at times. Like if some mute guy in a green tunic and weird hat walked up to me and started a conversation, I don't know if I'd just tell him my immediate problems in the hopes that he'd fix them. But if a dog walked up to me, sat down and started panting, I'd spill my heart out to them and then some. Like who wouldn't be willing to tell their problems to a dog? Okami's setup offers a much more interesting perspective than Zelda games if you ask me. Although the immersion is a bit ruined whenever I encounter a merchant in this game, like, I'm sorry, how does this dog have money? Like, normally Link has to be thrust into adventure by an outside force. Like, your dad in Link to the Past, the Great Deku Tree in Ocarina of Time, your sister getting kidnapped in Wind Waker, or the ugly kids being kidnapped in Twilight Princess. Seriously, I do not think Twilight Princess look that good nowadays, I'm sorry. Here, meanwhile, Amaterasu has all the motivation she needs to fight evil. She's the sun goddess, why would you not fight against dark? Plus her being a dog allows for some really silly moves. There is a taunt attack in this game that has you quite literally mark your enemies. Yep, not even gonna make a joke here, just gonna let this play out. Boy, those enemies sure must be pissed! Amaterasu is one of video games' greatest heroines, and I am not joking. She's like right up there with Samus Aran and Chun-Li. Is there another one? The girl from Celeste, she's pretty good. But who's a good girl? Who's a good girl? Yes, it's you! Yes, it's you! Okami's story is divided pretty distinctively into 3 arcs. I'll be going over each one in a different section of the video. The first of these arcs is centered around 2 important characters, Orochi and Susanoo. Basically, the game begins with the retelling of the story of Nagi, a hero who slayed the multi-headed dragon named Orochi. Cut to years later, and some mysterious figure removes the sword binding Orochi to his place of death. Uh-oh. After Sakuya reawakens us, we meet Isun, the wandering artist, and we begin our journey. The story mostly becomes a series of one-off encounters and small sub-stories about various NPCs we meet. But all the while, we regularly encounter this Susanoo guy. And he's great. He's basically what if Mr. Satan from Dragon Ball was in ancient Japan. He's a blowhard who comes across as lazy and full of himself. He's always talking about how he's the descendant of Nagi, the great hero who slayed Orochi. But you kinda get the impression he's not so sure of himself deep down. Yet as you travel along and accompany him, using your divine powers to assist him in his journey, he starts to have a breakdown. You get through 2 dungeons and 2 bosses in this game, meeting the K9 warriors along the way to get their power orbs. By the way, fun fact, this legend was also a partial inspiration for the Dragon Balls. I swear, I don't know why Dragon Ball came up twice in this section, it just did. You also encounter the mysterious Prophet Waka. Is he a demon from hell here to kill us? No, he is far worse. He's French!
We'll go together, my Tomodachi.
But his predictions seem oddly accurate. Anyway, as you fight more of Orochi's minions, things start to reach ahead when you help Kushi, a maiden at Kamiki Village, prepare some special sake for a festival. She's attacked by demons but is saved by Susanoo. Aww. It's here we get more insight into Susanoo's personality, along with his relationship to Kushi. Cause after getting our help in fending off the demons, Susanoo starts to panic. And this all starts to come ahead on the day of the festival, when we learn some troubling news. See, Orochi was poisoned in the original story by divine sake. The same sake that Kushi was brewing. But once we arrive at the village, Susanoo drank all the sake? What? How is he not dead? Oh yeah, and also, he was the one who removed the sword to awaken Orochi? Good job, you idiot, you doomed us all! But the more you learn about Susanoo, the more you really start to see the tragedy with the character. Susanoo is a descendant of Nagi, the hero who slayed Orochi. And at first you think, oh, this loser is just capitalizing off his ancestors' deeds to get famous. But then, it's not like he's super popular at the village or anything. In fact, the villagers kind of think of him as a bum. The only person he has a relationship with is Kushi, and she only talks about how helpful he is around the farm. And then you start to think, maybe we had this all wrong. Maybe other people assumed he would naturally fill Nagi's role by virtue of him being his descendant? Maybe it was society at large that pushed Susanoo to become a warrior who fights demons. Which is kind of a shit hand if you think about it. Like, imagine you learned that your granddad was a war hero, and now everyone was like, so, go and join the military and kill a bunch of people? Like, what? No! Maybe Susanoo really did just want to lead a peaceful life with Kushi. A Kushi lifestyle, if you will. But being his descendant, he was constantly told to fight various monsters that plagued the village, and soon he started to resent Nagi and his bloodline. So much so that he would go to the place of his ultimate battle and try to prove the whole thing was a hoax. Maybe the return of Orochi and us constantly helping him in his battles just got to him, making him feel like the gods are testing him, pushing him to fulfill a destiny he doesn't want. Which, not really, we're just making sure you don't die, idiot. So it makes sense that all of this pressure would get to him. But when push truly comes to shove, when the prophecy comes to pass and Kushi is doomed to be eaten by Orochi, it's her words that ultimately reach Susanoo. He is no coward, and if he's strong enough to fight, then he will. All of this culminates in the ultimate standoff with Orochi. Kushi's own sake doesn't affect the beast, and the curse barrier around him makes our own attacks ineffective. Yet it's Susanoo's bravery and heart that pulls through, destroying his barrier and letting us fight the evil monster. And in one final dramatic showdown, Susanoo takes up his ancestor's sword, destroying Orochi once and for all. Wow, the final boss is already dead. I didn't realize this game was so short. Hey, wait a minute. Won't be so easy when I fight Orochi next time. Oh no, is he going to be revived somehow? But But more pressing is that we haven't even found all of the 12 celestial brush techniques, which I think is a good segue for... Okami doesn't really follow Zelda-style progression. You don't find items in dungeons that are keys to beating the boss. Instead, you find special powers called Divine Brush Techniques. Yeah, when the developers were making this game and decided to use that more painterly art style, they thought, hey, why don't we make this paint an actual mechanic? You just press the R1 button and a blank canvas overlay comes across the image. Paint on it and you can do all sorts of things. Draw a line over enemies and you'll cut them with your sword technique. Draw a circle in the sky and you'll make the sun, changing the time from night to day. Or draw a half circle in the sky and create a moon, changing it from day to night. It's really cool how one very simple seeming mechanic can be made into a bunch of different powers. I just wish all the powers were well thought out and equally useful, yeah, sorry. Like, the first power you get is from this dragon, who gives you the power of restoration. Cool! This game will obviously have a lot of broken and missing objects I'll have to repair with this power, right? Right? Yeah, this is probably one of the more useless brush techniques. It really just solves some random mandatory quests in the game. I actually didn't know what to do about this tiger statue puzzle until I remembered, oh right, that was a power I had. Next one is Power Slash, and this is probably the most useful one in the game. At least it's the one you'll probably use the most. I really like how the god of the sword technique is a rat. Like, not the dragon or tiger or even the ox, the freaking rat.
Oh shit! A rat!
Oh yeah, I should probably mention, all the brush gods in the game are based off the Chinese zodiac, including you, because you're the dog, see? We then get 3 techniques that technically count as one. They're all monkeys. You know, like that see no evil, speak no evil, hear no evil thing? These ones are, well, one of them is useful to a point. But the other 2 kinda encompass my general issue with the brush techniques overall. One lets you sprout plants and gives life to dead trees. And the other lets you make lily pads so that you can stand on water. This one's the useful one, by the way. We then get a vine grapple hook technique that's mostly pretty context sensitive. It only works with these budding flowers. We then get a bomb technique from a boar. It's mostly used for blowing open holes, but it's also useful against some enemies, so it's okay. We then get the ability to make it night thanks to a rabbit. See, rabbits in Japanese myth are associated with the moon. I'm getting off topic. This one's pretty situational, and is only really useful when you need to do something during the night. We get a snake that lets us control water. This one's okay, but its upgrade is really the most useful part of it. We get a horse that lets us create gusts of wind. Again, pretty situational, but is used to counter several attacks like fire and poison mist. We get a rooster that lets us control fire. It's okay. We get a sheep that gives us a really cool ability. It's basically witch time. It's honestly probably one of the more useful abilities, but I tend to forget it's actually a thing, so... We get a cat that lets us climb up walls. Wait, I didn't think cats got to be a part of the Chinese zodiac. I could have sworn I saw an anime about that somewhere. We get a tiger that lets us control electricity, and we finish off with an ox that lets us control ice. Yeah, a lot of these techniques are kind of situational. I like that the game gives you the freedom to use the fire control or water control ability whenever you want. But chances are, once you know how these things interact, they just become very basic lock and key puzzles. Oh, I see a wall of ice and a torch nearby. I wonder what will happen if I drag the fire over to it. Wow, it melted the ice and made a path. I'll admit, that's kind of a nitpick, though. I mean, besides, it's not like items in Zelda are really much better. It's just me being a bit disappointed that the powers aren't used as creatively as I hoped they would be. Not only that, but sometimes the game will ask you to do something that you don't really understand. Like these 2 guards at a later location in the game. They won't let you pass, so how do you get through? Do you have to find another way around? No, you just use the sheep's ability to rush past them, as the mist makes them all dazed and stuff. How was I supposed to know how to do that? I mean, I guess it makes sense, kinda, but I could see people getting stuck on this part. Plus, I sorta dislike how the last power you get in this game is just control ice. Like, oh, you've been looking for these 12 powerful ancient gods, and you're finally at your journey's end and found all 12 of them, and your ultimate reward is... ice control. Yeah, that's kinda lame, I'm not gonna lie. I honestly think fire, water, electricity, and ice could have all been one divine brush. Or just one god divided into 4, like how the monkey god was divided into 3. But then I don't know what I'd replace the other 3 powers with, and I'm not a game designer. So I guess I'll just say that's one small little problem in the game's pacing that bugged me, and I'll leave it at that. In all other respects, I think this game has a pretty decent progression. Doing things like restoring dead trees, helping NPCs, or just doing random things to improve people's lives earns you faith. Which, as I said before, kinda works like experience in this game. You use it to gain HP, ink pots, astral pouches, which are sort of like balls with fairies in them, and increase your wallet size. But, I would recommend increasing your ink pots over everything else at first. I'll explain why when I talk about combat, but yeah, this game is not terribly difficult, so you don't really need to worry about health or astral pouches.
Except for one encounter that I'll get to later, remember that.
And you probably won't be making enough money to fill up your wallet anytime soon. Outside of that, this game does offer you a few, let's call them tunic-type items. You know, things you equip yourself to let you do things like survive lava, or walk on water. I mean, you're already a goddess, that's not that special, really. That mostly covers your progress through this game. Oh, I totally forgot about this. There's this old kendo instructor who teaches you moves if you give him money. He's cool. He teaches you how to double jump. I don't know why this old man wants to teach dogs how to fight. That's funny. And he also does beautiful Joe poses, so yeah, he's cool, whatever. I'd honestly say this might be one of the weaker elements to Okami. As I said before, the game is divided into 3 arcs, and of the 12 techniques, 8 of them are in the first arc of the game. 3 of them are in the second arc, being that ox that gives us ice. That's the only one we get in the third arc. That partially adds to my disappointment in it. We get to the climax of the game in the last brush technique, and it's just a reframe of the same element control power we got with water, fire, and lightning. So yeah, that part's a bit disappointing. But if the worst thing I can say about the game is the brush techniques are a bit front-loaded and situational, then you can tell that we got something special here. Believe me, the rest of this review is going to be a lot more positive.
Except for a bit later, but I'll get to that.
The Orochi Arc was pretty straightforward as far as narratives go. We had a very front-facing villain in the form of Orochi, and we had a very large personality in Susanoo guiding us along. But the second arc is a lot more mysterious. There's certainly a lot of stuff happening. A horrible fog has come over Seian City, causing all of its people to fall sickly. Said fog seems to be coming from the Imperial Palace itself. Queen Himiko, the direct successor to the Emperor, has hidden away in her quarters and forbids anyone from approaching her. And worse, a horrible sea monster known as the Water Dragon has been terrorizing the coast, sinking ships and causing food supplies to dry up. All of this is somehow related to an ominous island off the coast, Oni Island, a land where evil congregates. Where once we had a clear and present danger, we now have nothing to go on but palace intrigue. Who is behind all this? The Emperor? Queen Himiko? Or maybe the Water Dragon itself is pulling the strings? Our only ally in this trying time is the kindly priestess Rao and her 2 friends. By which I of course mean the 2 guards standing outside her temple in the city. What else did you think I meant? This section of the story is a bit odd. Again, we don't have a clearly defined enemy. There is no evil demon lord going, "Bwahaha, I have taken over the city." We're just left to observe several horrible disasters and wonder who the actual nemesis is. People make vague allusions to a Dark Lord of Oni Island, but we don't know who or what that is. And to this point, you might get a bit worried that the game's gonna do something lame like revive Orochi again. But don't worry, it's much smarter than that. One by one, we begin to eliminate potential suspects. The Emperor seems like a suspect, but it turns out, he's just possessed by an evil suit of armor. Oh no, he's not wearing the suit of armor. No, that would be silly. He just swallowed it. So we need to fight it in his stomach. What, did you think we were going to go inside a giant fish? We meet Queen Himiko, and she actually seems pretty nice and cooperative. She tells us that the mermaids control the Water Dragon, and we need the Water Dragon in order to get to Oni Island. The island apparently teleports every night, and she tries to find out where it'll be next with her crystal ball. But it also has a barrier that only the Water Dragon can penetrate. Aha! So the fish people are behind this. Sorry, B-Mask, I like your videos. So we get to meet Otohime, and she tells us that they don't control the Water Dragon. That the Water Dragon was actually their king, who used an artifact called the Dragon Orb to turn into the Water Dragon in order to fight off an army of demons from Oni Island. But in this ensuing fight, he was driven mad and now just terrorizes the coast. And all the while this is going on, Rao is telling us about a weapon that she believes can defeat the Demon Lord of Oni Island, an item called the Fox Rods, and that if she just has this item, she could defeat the island's lord. So we go inside the Water Dragon. There we go, that's more like it, giant fish! And we manage to get the Dragon Orb from him. Neat. Only... We fight off a bunch of fox demons and they drop the fox rods that Rao was looking for. We escape the dragon's mouth, only to see that it's too late. We've inadvertently killed the Water Dragon, and his dying spirit speaks to us about what transpired. Apparently when he was fighting off the Lord of Oni Island, he swallowed something that belonged to him, and that's what drove him mad. These fox rods seem to be more suspicious by the hour. Why on earth would Rao, a holy priestess, want something that seems to draw on demonic power? Maybe we should hold on to these before we... Do-Isan, you idiot! Don't tell her that we have those! Oh well, at least I can trust Amaterasu to... Yeah, this is the one time in this game I'm legit shaking my screen going, "What are you doing, you morons?" We then get a vision from the Dragon Orb of Rao being attacked by something. We go to investigate and oh no. We need to go warn Queen Himiko fast and oh no. Yes, the Rao we've been talking to isn't the real Rao. She was dead long before we arrived. So the Rao we've been meeting this whole time is the Dark Lord himself. Or rather herself. With one final message from Himiko and an act of bravery from Otohime, we go to Oni Island. And it's here the game does several clever things. See, in Japanese mythology, there's one rather infamous demon slash yokai slash monster that tends to get referenced a lot. After all, there's a Pokemon named after it. An infamous shapeshifter who takes on the form of beautiful women while bringing ruin to nations. Yet curiously, these shapeshifting demons are also regarded in some sects of Shinto with a level of divinity. In fact, some might say the creature itself is some form of god. And what is the best possible type of boss in a video game? It's not the big, dumb, ugly monster with a bunch of limbs and weird powers. The best boss in a video game is you, but better. And so, without further ado, the best boss in Okami, Ninetales. This is such a good fight. The whole time you're taught that seeing a constellation results in you meeting a god and learning a new brush technique. Except this time, the god is an enemy? Ninetales is this huge, white, godlike fox. And once more, she can use divine brush techniques too? Bring up the mat and don't move too quickly and she'll use her own powers to mess you up. But once you get her down in life, the revelation occurs. Ninetales isn't a goddess like you. She was just an old corrupt demon fox who used her powers of illusion to pretend to be a god. A demon masquerading as a god to fool all who witness. But she can't stand up to the real deal. Use her instruments and powers to take her down, putting an end to Oni Island and its terrifying lord. One thing I've always admired about Hideki Kamiya as a director is that he loves video games. Like most game auteurs, they're known because of their use of cinematic language. Even developers that I like Hideo Kojima, are more known because of their commitment to cinematic storytelling. Whereas Kamiya thinks about his work as a gamer. And that's not necessarily a bad thing, because this is a video game-ass boss, and it's really appropriate. Now with all that said, let's talk about the mechanics of this game before we get to the final chapter. Those of you familiar with Hideki Kamiya's work might be a bit worried when you heard his name pop up there. Especially if you're not a hardcore action game fan. Cause yes, Hideki Kamiya also made Devil May Cry, Beautiful Joe, Bayonetta, and such. But this game is probably the least Kamiya-like game Kamiya ever made. It doesn't even have a Space Harrier sequence. What is this, Kamiya? But no, while Okami does have some Kamiya-isms in its combat, it's a lot more downplayed. You have a basic combo with your main weapon, and your sub-weapon gives you a secondary move. Mirrors are a basic 3 to 5 hit combo. Beads are a ranged attack that rapid fire. And swords are also a basic combo, but they can be charged if you hold down the button. On the sub-weapon, mirrors give you a block/parry, beads give you a ranged attack, and swords give you a secondary combo string. Personally speaking, I tend to go for the sword main weapon and mirror sub-weapon. Just because I like charging up attacks, and parrying has this really cool animation.
Oh my goodness! You gotta be kidding me!
It doesn't work on all enemies sadly, but Combat in this game is for the most part pretty lax and easygoing. Each enemy tends to come in one of several categories and each one has a weakness. Like these guys that block your attacks and can be broken with a power slash. Or these guys that fly but again can be knocked down with a power slash. You got flower bud enemies that you can circle, and other enemies that, I'm gonna be real, I never really figured out. I just powered through them. See, Amaterasu has this gauge called Godhood, which basically serves as a shield against attacks. The more hits you build up against enemies, the more your Godhood increases. Which makes the game pretty forgiving if you can keep up your attacks. This combined with the fact enemies generally deal a little amount of damage, means the combat in this game is pretty straightforward. Yes, the game does have a ranking system of sorts, but unlike in Devil May Cry or Bayonetta, you're not ranked on them at the end. You're just given extra money if you do well, which I think is a fair enough incentive, I guess. So yeah, combat in this game isn't all that deep or involved, but honestly that's fine, because again, this is a Zelda game. Tell me, have you ever heard anyone say, "Oh man, the combat in this Zelda game was so deep and involved"? No, because combat has never been a focus of Zelda games. Except maybe Hyrule Warriors, but I haven't played that, so I couldn't tell you. Zelda games are about the adventure, about finding new locations, meeting quirky NPCs, and having harrowing events happen. For what Okami is trying to be, it does it well enough. The second aspect of this game are the side quests and NPCs you meet on the adventure. Which, I'll be real, the side quests in this game aren't all that engaging. Not bad by any stretch, but more on the Ocarina of Time scale versus, say, the Majora's Mask scale. You have NPCs like this running guy, who you have to headbonk because he tries to evade you. This dumb mole who gives you his backstory after you beat him. This game does have some pretty entertaining NPCs, but they're mostly a part of the main story. I like the boss of Sasa Sanctuary. I love how he just goes, chirp, and everyone just magically knows what he means. Also, I thought Kaguya's story was really charming. And it's also foreshadowing for something later on. Outside of that, yeah, a lot of the sub-stories and characters are just kinda nothing to me. I'm sure if you played this game, you might be attracted to one character over another, but don't go in expecting anything too deep or involved. The side stories in this game are just short little episodes meant to tide you over. They're fun if you enjoy that sort of stuff, but they're not the meat of the story. But what do you get from doing these side quests? Well, to answer that... Throughout this game, you'll encounter NPCs and various chests hidden throughout the overworld. These chests will have stray beads. The game in total has 99 of them. For the most part, these beads are simple to attain. Use a guide if you really want. They're not that hard to find. Admittedly, some of them are a bit annoying, like the Running Man ones and the Thief one, but for the most part, they're pretty easy to get. However, in certain sections of the game, you'll find these holes that you can fall into. And in these holes, you'll see a spider enemy. Basically a reskin of the first boss of the game. Beat them and then leave. And when you come back, there will be one of these demon gates. You'll need to beat a whole bunch of demons in a constant stream in order to earn a stray bead. The game has 3 of these. The first 2 aren't so bad. Just wait until the end of the game maybe before you do them. But the last one? Oh, the last one is just the worst. Multiple demon gates, with multiple late game enemies that I swear have buffed health and stats. But that's not all, because then the game throws 2 Wakas at you. That's right, 2 mini-bosses that you need to fight at the same time. Then it has you fight 2 Kitsune Rows, then a Waka and a Demon Row. And just when you think, okay, are we done? We good? This finally over? They throw in 3 Nagis. Oh yeah, you fight Nagi in this game. We'll talk about that later, don't worry. But yeah, you fight 3 of them. And they all throw out these stupid sword projectiles, and this is not good battle design. You haven't actually made a more challenging and engaging encounter, you've just added more enemies. It's lazy design, and Okami's combat does not account for this kind of enemy setup. This is the one time in the game I actually had to use my astral pouches and gold peaches. Because fuck me, this is hard. But don't worry, I eventually realized, oh, I have these slips that make me invincible for several seconds. No penalty for using these either. Handy tip, stock up on these before you go into this trial. Is this good combat design? Nope. It sucks that the guy who made Wonderful 101, a game that I absolutely adore, could also make a combat encounter this shitty. You get a D rank, Kamiya. Okay, I'm sorry, I swear, that's as negative as I'll be on this game. Just know that if you try to get 100% in this game, yeah, that'll suck. The last part of Okami's story sees you taken to the northern land of Kamui, obviously based off of Hokkaido. This is where the story takes another turn that, honestly, I have some mixed thoughts on. The land of Kamui is being frozen by 2 clockwork owls, Lechku and Nechku. Man, what is with this era of games and evil mechanical owls? Anyway, these 2 owls aren't really characters. Unlike Orochi and Ninetales, they don't talk and they don't plot or manipulate events. They're just big evil monsters that you gotta beat, which is a bit disappointing after having 2 bosses with actual dialogue. To supplement this, however, the game chooses to instead focus inward. Instead of focusing on the villain and how to beat them, we focus in on our 2 protagonists. Isun has been following us throughout this journey, and I haven't spoken much about him. Mostly because I think he's just an okay partner. I like when you shrink down inside the Emperor's palace and then get to see him at his full size, but a lot of his humor gets kinda stale fast. Except for that bit like, I don't know if my boss is gonna agree to this. What do you say, boss? Bark! Well, there you have it. Wait, what? Yeah, that one's pretty fun. I like that one. But hey, guess what? He's a perv! Aw, he keeps talking about Rao's melons. And when he sees a beautiful woman, he goes awooga and faints. Yeah, I'm not a prude or anything, but this does get a bit old a bit fast. Not helping is that his little voice chirps just make him sound like a child, so that's just icky. But it's here in this section of the game that we actually start to learn more about Isun. His reaction to Kaguya's story starts to be put into context. We encounter members of the Yoina tribe, who seem to recognize Isun. Isun himself also seems to recognize them. And it's then we get some insight into the backstory of this place. Kamui is said to be the land of demons, where they originate from. because an arc from the heavens crashed there years ago, carrying an army of Celestials along with an army of horrible monsters that consumed them. Only one Celestial survived the onslaught. It's then that we're told of an Oina girl who can potentially stop the land from freezing. But she's lost in the forest, and the only people who might know of her location are the Ponkles, Isun's people. Yet Isun seems averse to returning to his homeland. I wonder why. It's then that we meet Isun's grandfather, an artist who dedicated his life to creating art that would inspire faith in the gods. And he seems to recognize Amaterasu. Strange. He's also disowned his grandson, and oh, I see. It's then the story goes extra off the rails when we're told of a magical gate. We go to this gate and it takes us to Kamiki Village. Except Sakuya's tree isn't here. Hey, can you help us, little girl? Oh. Oh, no. This is a time travel story? Yeah, we go back to the night when Nagi, Susanoo's ancestor, fought Orochi. And after some comedic misunderstandings and accidents, we need to set things right. So yeah, we wind up fighting Orochi again. But not because he was revived, no. We fight both him in the present and in the past. That's genius. We fulfill the legend of Nagi and make his sword glow thanks to the moon's blessing. And then, what? Okay, so I'm gonna have to try to keep things as simple as I can, and explain just what the timeline of events here is. But to do that, I need to talk about this guy we've been following named Oki. Oki's cool. He's more of your edgy anime brooding guy, but that's fine.
Cut my life into pieces. This is my last resort.
He stole the sacred sword of his people because of a legend, where it'll glow silver to split ice to banish demons. He's convinced that in order to do this, he just needs to slay enough demons. But he hasn't realized yet that probably isn't gonna work. So, Shiranui, aka Amaterasu's past form from 100 years ago, went on an adventure and somehow learned that in order to free the Frozen Arc, she would have to awaken the mystic sword of the Oni people. So she travels to the future via the time travel gate where she assists us, Amaterasu, in fighting one of the Clockwork Owls. It's then that Oki arrives at the other owl and he rushes in to defeat them, like the headstrong shonen anti-hero that he is. Only...
Is that a freaking JoJo reference?
Shiranui is greatly wounded by the owl's attack. Oki sees his prey flee, but also sees the wolf who saved him dangle precariously. Oki then realizes that he must close the bloodlust in his heart. He saves us, and in this noble act, the sword awakens to its power. We then use this power and team up to defeat the two owls, once and for all. Shiranui has accomplished her mission, and returns back to her own time. Right as we defeat Orochi for the first time. Yeah, it's a bit confusing, but it makes more sense than Bayonetta, so screw it. It's a solid enough time travel plot. We've defeated the owls, saved Kamui, and Oki winds up freeing the Celestial Arc from its imprisonment. And it's here that the Oni people tell us, we have to go on board there. The Arc is from heaven, and we, as a goddess, have to return to our plane of existence. Up until now, I haven't really talked much about Amaterasu as a character, because there isn't much to say really. She's a dog. It makes sense she wouldn't say much. And more importantly, Amaterasu isn't really the focal character of this story. It's the character who's been with us the entire time. Isun. This game isn't really about Amaterasu as a character, or her journey to vanquish evil, or her objective to return to the celestial plane. This is the journey of Isun to realize his mission in life. Isun's grandfather states that Isun was a great artist and could have potentially surpassed him, but he was too forceful and it drove him away. And Isun, having lost his passion for art, just wanted to learn the celestial brush technique as he wanted to be famous and renowned. He didn't want to follow his family's obligation. But traveling with Amaterasu, seeing what good she did, what stories she inspired, and how much she helped people, it's made him slowly realize what his grandfather was trying to teach him. How important it is that people believe in the gods because of what the gods do for us. A world without faith is a cold and dark world indeed. And now, he has to confront what that means for him going forward. We ascend the Rainbow Bridge to board the Ark, but Isun tells us that he can't come with us. After all, he just hung around to learn the celestial brush techniques. Waka then appears and tells Isun that indeed he can't come with us, because the Ark is only for gods and celestial, which he is not. He's just a Ponkle, a little bug sent out on a journey. And so, we go inside the Ark, and we basically get a boss rush. We encounter several dead celestials who tell us about what happened. How Orochi attacked the Lunarian civilization and almost destroyed it. How the celestials fled the Ark to the human world, only to bring a horde of demons along with them. And how every time one of those impossibly large demons was killed, a piece of it floated off back here, to rejoin with its core. It's then that we encounter the true villain of the game, the Heart of Darkness itself, the core of all that is bad in the world.
If it isn't our slippery old friend and arch nemesis, Max Salmon.
How exactly did he get that way, Sam?
Yeah, this is Yami, and he's kind of a lame final boss. I mean, I like the idea of a dinky little fish protecting himself with a bunch of evil machinery. That's a cool image, and gives credence to the idea of evil being weak but relying on cheap tricks to gain power. But it kind of just comes out of nowhere. He doesn't even talk. He's kind of the most boring of the antagonists despite being the final one, and that sucks. But oh no! The solar eclipse! Our divine brush powers are taken from us! The evil ball tries to kill us, but Waka then reveals that he was the Celestial who survived the assault! He's not a bad guy. He's just been trying to strengthen us for our ultimate battle. Okay, bye, Waka.
I'll be back.
So then we fight Yami. We get our brush powers back. We kick its ass to the curbside, and Isan tells us to give a triumphant howl. Except, Isan isn't here with us anymore. He's gone now. And we can't continue our journey with him. And then things take an even more dramatic turn, as Yami is far from finished with us. The demon god takes on its ultimate form, and we fall to our darkest hour. Except, there's still hope. Because at the end of the day, we're a god. We're powered by people's faith in us. And as that faith grows, as more people believe in us, their prayers reach out to us. And it's then that this game makes its big reveal. Yeah, I know, it's stereotypical anime ending 105. All of your friends and all the people you've encountered in your journey thus far are cheering you on and telling you to keep fighting and give you strength to continue. But here it does mean something. All this time, you've been told Amaterasu has grown weak, that she's not the goddess she was, that she's grown powerless due to people's lack of faith. But now, Isan is out there, painting scrolls in your image, showing the world that you are a goddess, someone trying to save the land from darkness. And now the people are once more putting their faith in you. They're praying for your success, and what's more useful to a god than a prayer? Amaterasu evolves into her ultimate life form once more. The same form she took back 100 years ago. And she finally casts her sun into the sky, banishing the darkness and putting the kibosh on Yami once and for all. We get one more fight against the demon god, and we finally take that stupid fish down. Amaterasu and Waka fly off into the night sky, back to the celestial plane, and they talk about how their journey has only just started. Isan looks on and talks about how he's going to spread the word of the beloved sun goddess. And thus ends Okami. Which I think gives us a good opportunity to talk about Okami. Hello? Uh-huh. Yeah? What? Talk about the DS game? There was a DS game? Oh shit, there was a DS game! Okamiden is a DS game that stars Amaterasu's child, Chibi-Terasu. If that premise alone is making you a bit leery, don't worry, it's not that bad. In fact, I dare say the premise probably undersold the game to a lot of people. You basically play as Chibi-Terasu going on befriending a bunch of kid characters and doing a bunch of dungeons, which are actually pretty well done. You meet Susanoo and Kushi's adoptive son, Kuni. You meet a girl named Nanami, a Shrine Maiden actress girl named Kagu, and a mysterious blonde-haired kid named Kuro, who looks suspiciously like Waka. Oh, and this fat kid named Manpuku. He is fat, and you only do one dungeon with him, yeah. I'm not really gonna go too much into this game, mostly because it wasn't made by Kamiya or any of the programmers or developers of the first game. I like the dungeons, they can be fun. Combat is even more basic than the first game, and it's kinda boring. Because it's a DS game, you use the stylus for a lot of the brush mechanics, which I found kind of annoying. But that's probably because I was playing it on an emulator, and using a mouse for it, which isn't as 1-1 as a stylus is. It still worked, mind, I didn't really have much of a problem with the game. But I don't know if I can recommend emulating it. The only real problem I had with Okamiden is that a lot of it is just kind of going back over the set pieces and characters from the first Okami. Look, it's Kamiki Village! Look, it's Hana Cave! Look, it's Seian City! Look, it's Mr. Orange again! Look, it's Sakuya!
I know what that is!
Occasionally the game will introduce something new to the setting, like these Oni guys in the clouds, and they're cool. Big spoilers here, but you literally get to see Orochi killed 2 more times in this game. It's a bit, yeah. What I liked about Okami was its unique setting and mythology. and just doing the same thing but smaller is just kind of lame. But outside of that, it's still a pretty fun game. I don't know, it was fun enough, I guess. If you're like super into the PS2 game, you can try it out, but I don't think you'll be really missing much if you choose to ignore it. It ends on sort of a cliffhanger, which I don't know if it's going to be resolved. Speaking of... The Game Awards are kind of a joke. Like, they've always been a joke. More so than even the Oscars or the Grammys or I don't know, some third award show I don't know about. Everyone has made jokes about them. But I will say, Jeff Keighley does at least seem like someone who pays attention to the criticism and tries to rectify himself. Not that it'll always work, mind, but I do get the feeling he at least pays attention to the critical reception of each award show. And the reason I say that is because the 2024 Game Awards were actually pretty good. Yeah, there were some things in there that I thought were cringe, but for the most part, it was actually kind of a good award show. And I'm not saying that because Astrobot won Game of the Year, that was just a nice add-on. But the big thing that happened at the end, and the reason I made this video, is what was announced. I remember watching the award show with my friend Hunter and just being confused. Jeff seemed so confident what he was about to show off. So sure that this was going to be something impressive, and I didn't know why. So naturally, I just assumed it was like the new Grand Theft Auto or a new Halo or something. I mean, in order for me to get hyped, it'd need to be something pretty insane, like, I don't know, a new Okami. Oh my god! I mean, don't get too excited, it's not like Kamiya's back at Capcom or anything. Bikurishita! So yeah, Kamiya's back. The first Okami didn't do too well sales-wise either, so this revelation is pretty incredible. Granted, the people who fired Kamiya initially at Capcom probably don't work there anymore, but it's still cool that he was given the opportunity. So all we can do now is wonder, what will Okami 2 look like? What will the premise be? Will Kamiya try to make it more of an action game? Or will he try to keep true to the original and just make it a simple adventure game like Zelda? At first, I wasn't really sure. But then I got to thinking, what is the premise of Okami? A hero from the ancient past is mortally injured. Then, 100 years later, they're awakened via some kind of magic. They go out and explore the wilderness. They learn more about their past. The truth of their identity and their destiny is uncovered. Now, I didn't know if Nintendo was actively borrowing from Okami when they made Breath of the Wild, but the similarities do stand out to me. And then I got thinking, what would a more open-ended, non-linear Okami game be like? A game where you started out with your brush powers, create trees, change the flow of rivers, conjure fire. What if Okami 2 was Kamiya's attempt at doing a Breath of the Wild style game? That idea might piss off some people, especially those who want to return to classic Zelda formula and are hoping Okami 2 will be that. But I do believe it's worth thinking about. Because honestly, I think the Celestial Brush allows for a lot more open-ended design than you might realize. At the very least, I think approaching a more non-linear design might be worth looking into. Will Okami 2 follow up on the end of Okamiden? Will Chibi-Terasu and Isen go visit the Celestial Plane? Hell, will Okami 2 even take place in ancient Japan? Maybe it'll take place in a slightly more modern setting, like the Meiji period. Or maybe that might be too close to some real-world events. Or heck, maybe it'll take place in the modern day even, who knows? Maybe they'll cover a whole bunch of new and different stories and characters. Heck, maybe Amaterasu might leave Japan and go visit the mainland. Maybe they'll throw in some Chinese folklore like Sun Wukong or Romance of the Three Kingdoms. Just please, for the love of God, no Oda Nobunaga. I've had enough of him. The future is pretty dark, and prayers might not save us. But it might be comforting on some level to think that somewhere out there, someone or something is watching over us. And that someone is a very good girl who just wants some head pats. Stay safe out there, y'all.